case for nuclear energy. In today's society, many people are aware of the negative effects of climate change. However, at times it seems like not much is being done to address the matter. That's why many would be surprised to learn that Scotland has already achieved a net zero emission economy, which is environmentally conscious. People might be further surprised to realize that the solution lied not in renewable energy, but rather nuclear energy. When I lived in Spain, my house had a lovely view of the skyline of the city. However, that view was ruined by 3 smokestacks that stuck up into the view and spoiled it. Ever since I lived in that house, I've had a special interest in cleaner energy for our environment. In this speech, I will talk about how current energy production methods are killing our Earth. I will also talk about the plan to implement nuclear energy and why nuclear energy is more practical than some of the other renewable energies. According to a study by Davis Deborah, a member of the United Nations World Health Organization, 6 million tons of CO2 are pumped into the atmosphere every year as a result of current energy production methods. The U.S. Energy Information Center says that 38% of our nation's energy comes from natural gases, while 23% come from coal, and only 20% comes from nuclear energy. This means that we have a lot of deadly greenhouse gases entering our atmosphere, and this is a problem for many reasons. One of these being global warming. There's something called the greenhouse gas effect, where light rays come down from the sun, hit the Earth's surface, but when they try to reflect back or deflect back into space, they're trapped by a large number of gases in our atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is actually one of the least common greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. However, according to the National Resource Defense Council, 76% of all gas that we produce is actually greenhouse gas that we produce is actually carbon dioxide. This, although many people think it comes from cars, actually a large majority of it comes from current energy production methods such as the burning of fossil fuels to power our houses. This also can lead to worse air quality. According to a study by the researchers at the Oxford Martin School, 36.15 tons of CO2 is released into our atmosphere every year. This has led to things like masks becoming commonplace in China before the COVID-19 virus was ever a thing. This is because when the particulate from the CO2 gas is inhaled into your lungs, it can lead to many negative effects. And obviously, should current energy production methods keep releasing particulate into the atmosphere, this could be a very serious problem. Now I'm going to talk, so we've talked a little bit about the negative effects of current energy production methods, but what can be done to alleviate this problem? Well, we could always switch energy production methods to something a little bit more clean, like nuclear reactors. According to the Science Scopes journal, it would cost roughly $4 billion to build a nuclear reactor. On top of that, nuclear energy actually costs more, according to the same journal, costs more per megawatt hour than current energy production methods. So why is this a viable plan? Well, the government has already shown interest into subsidizing this energy production method. This means that they would provide money to companies to help expand their businesses. Well, why would some people might say, well, this cost would fall on the taxpayers as they're being bailed out by the government. Well, yes and no. This switch to cleaner energy would lead to less money being spent on conservation efforts and cleaning up the environment. Therefore, taxes would be lower as those programs would be reduced. So it kind of balances out, which is why the government is interested in subsidizing it. In addition, a journal by the Environmental Protection Agency also said that as nuclear energy becomes more popular, the plans for new bases, reactors and whatnot become more streamlined and the prices will fall. On top of that, nuclear energy is very readily available. Some people might think that radioactive materials are actually very rare, but that's actually not the case. The Science Scope journal suggests that there's 890 million pounds of uranium ore, which can readily be used to create nuclear reactors, or help fuel nuclear reactors. One such pellet of uranium ore actually can produce the same amount of energy as 17,000 cubic feet of natural gas and 49 gallons of oil. This is clearly enough to fuel our economy for a long time to come, as one pellet has the same potential energy as this large amount of current fuel. On top of that, people also ask about the infrastructure. Well, who is going to build the infrastructure? Well, as I mentioned earlier, 20% of the United States energy is already provided by nuclear energy. This comes from large companies such as Exelon Corp or Energy Corp. This means that these large companies already exist, and all we need to do is provide them with the money to expand. As I mentioned before, the government has already shown interest in subsidizing this field. So should they just direct money away from conservation efforts and towards cleaner energy, we could clearly create new infrastructure to do that. And what would be the extent of this switch to nuclear energy? Well, one such journal by the Environmental Protection Agency suggests that we should err on the side of caution, which would mean making nuclear energy far and away the largest source of power generation in the United States, which would be roughly to 50 to 60%, because we don't know exactly how much carbon dioxide can be absorbed by nature naturally. So we could potentially still use natural gas and whatnot, but we should switch largely to nuclear reactors. While 4 billion might be hard to stomach for some people, and they would rather use dependable energy, there are some issues with other sources of renewable energy. For example, nuclear energy is not not weather dependent, unlike solar power or wind power or even hydroelectric power. A study by Richard Rose, a researcher at Yale, suggested that nuclear energy can produce for 336 days out of the year, while hydroelectric can produce for 138 and wind for only 127. Well, in today's society where energy is so important, this is just not going to cut it. We cannot roll the dice on having energy one day and not having it the other. We need a dependable source of energy, and it seems like nuclear energy is more dependable than other sources. On top of that, nuclear energy also does not produce any emissions, which helps alleviate the greenhouse gas effect, as I mentioned earlier. The EPA proposed a plan for cleaner energy, and this was a 4-pillar plan, with one of the 4 pillars being nuclear energy. It cites specifically nuclear energy because of its lack of emissions. On top of that, people think now, as a result of disasters in the past, that nuclear energy is very unsafe. This is simply not the case. One such disaster was the Fukushima meltdown of the reactor. However, none of the 200,000 surrounding residents of the area showed any sign of nuclear or radiation poisoning as a result of newer, safer precautions. It is also not hard to dispose of nuclear waste as a result of a 2-kilometer thick salt bed stretching from Kansas to New Mexico, according to which could hold our nuclear waste for the next 1,000 years, according to Richard Rose. On top of that, nuclear reactors are land effective. We've all seen pictures of sprawling wind farms, and while nuclear reactors are not nearly as pretty as that, they use a lot less land. This land that I've just shown you, full of wind turbines, well, it can't be used for anything else, whereas nuclear reactors are confined to a smaller area, and it's clear to see that they produce much more energy per unit area, which is much more land effective. As my time comes to a close today, I would like to revisit the small country of Scotland. They have already solved this problem. They've already addressed it, which means that now it's the world's time to try and step forward and solve this problem. The current energy production methods are killing our Earth, which means we need to do something. I propose nuclear energy as it is becoming more readily available, and as we know more about it, and it's more dependable than current renewable energies. So as you leave here today, I propose that when you think green, you think of a glowing green, a nuclear green, because nuclear energy could be a major key in solving our energy crisis going forward. Thank you.